Hey guys, we're back on episode number 7, still here with Dr. Kaitlyn McSurdy, and we're going to dive right back in. It's funny that you mentioned figs. Like, I'm a huge figs fan, and I don't know if I think I've seen you on Twitter, and I'm not that active on Twitter just because I feel like medical Twitter, among the many social media aspects of medicine, med Twitter feels a little toxic. It's just like Twitter is a strange social media platform. But it's just comical to me that there's, when you're in residency, there are very few things that you can do to make yourself comfortable throughout the day. And I see some older attendings, and I get it. There's a culture of selling yourself out on social media for like a pair of scrubs. And I think that younger generation of med students, because I think I got onto social media a little bit earlier when not everyone had was taking pictures of their notes and stuff and posting on social media, but I got in a little bit earlier, and it's easy for me to say, like, with an established following, like, don't focus on the social media. But it's kind of, in my mind, one of those things where if you can afford a comfy pair of scrubs and you want to wear them to work, go for it. Treat yourself. I mean, don't treat yourself too much, because at the end of the day, the scrubs in the hospital are certainly free. But I wanted to pivot that to how you use social media. Again, I know you're a D1 or ex-D1. I feel like once you're a D1 athlete, you're always a D1. It's not like you still got it in you. And I
my
see
knees
that a lot
don't say the same thing though.
You what?
My knees don't feel the same.
Yeah, that's when you're getting older, is when you don't have a left and a right. You got like a good and a bad. That's when my favorite thing to do is like make old man noises whenever I get up, like, oh man, that's, But my point being, in a roundabout way, is how do you use social media? And what do you tell med students or interns who are interested in social media, whether it's what I use it for, which is eventually to try to educate patients, connect with other people, kind of do what we're doing, which is humanize medicine a little bit, show future and current interns that we're just people. And I always feel like if I can do it, then anyone can. But how do you use social media, and what advice would you have for anyone who's thinking about starting their professional life with social media?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting that you asked this, because I recently gave our med students 4th year class the capstone lecture on social media and medicine, and just the transition from being a med student on social media to being a doctor on social media. So I feel like I was actually relatively prepared to answer this question. I think it really depends on what platform I'm using personally. Like you said, I have a presence on med Twitter. It's not very prominent because I don't tweet that much. And I think a lot of it comes from my own imposter syndrome. I think most of the accounts that I follow, and the reason I use med Twitter, is for a learning tool for myself. And so I feel like I'm learning from a lot of fellows, I'm learning from a lot of attendings. I follow a lot of journals. And so I feel like since I have so much to learn yet, that I guess my medical opinion isn't necessarily valued as someone in training, which probably isn't necessarily true, but that's my own imposter syndrome getting at me. So I think I use med Twitter more as a learning tool for myself than I do to do any promoting or educating or, helping coach IMGs. Obviously for Instagram, that's completely different. I use Instagram mainly for coaching IMGs and helping them get residencies, and not only just IMGs, but I have tons of pre-meds who've reached out to me on just how to get into medical school and general application advice.
It's being annoying.
And then I've had a lot of especially this year, interns who were about to start residency, and they have no idea what it's going to be like. They really just, like you said, they want to see what is residency actually like? Can you be a human? Can you still have a life outside of medicine? Can you do all of this research and work all of these hours? And the answer is yes, but it's kind of about conveying that to people. And so I think that's what I mainly use Instagram for. I am trying to start using it a little more for med ed, which I know is what people tend to use med Twitter for. But I think I feel a little more comfortable with Instagram, because I already do have a presence, and I already do have a bunch of followers who are med students, pre-meds, who are looking to learn the information and review it anyways while they're mindlessly scrolling. So I think that's why I feel a little more comfortable with the med ed aspect of Instagram. And I mean, at least for myself, I think I learn a little better, like visually and auditory, than I do by reading. And med Twitter is, of course, a lot of reading. I mean, there's pictures too, I guess, but yeah. So I think it's just like how I learn. And so hopefully I can help other learners who learn the same way as me.
Yeah, I kind of mirror kind of what I agree with everything you said, that I feel like on Twitter, I don't like using it because just like you said, you know, what am I going to do? Post a cardiac case? Like there's the people who wrote the books on Twitter. Like, what am I contributing? But it's really nice to see, you know, sometimes people really interacting with one another and trying to find your level and your contribution of like, what are you going to do? And I mostly, I don't know, I kind of lurk on Twitter because I agree. I use it so much to learn, and I still follow a bunch of internal medicine, nephrology, like neurology, like stuff that I just wouldn't have access to. I remember my program director showed us a random EKG, and it was a spike and dome helmet. And it was like you know, you can see it with metabolic derangements. And he pulls it up in our for like a random trivia, and he's like, guys, what is this? And I pull that out of my back pocket. And I'm like, oh, that looks like spike and dome helmet from what metabolic. And if you can imagine, they don't see me always as the smartest one in our fellowship, and everyone turns their heads and they're like, what the hell? How did you know that? And I was like, oh, you know, I tried to play it off really cool. And I was like, oh yeah, I was just doing some reading in my free time. But like literally had just like been scrolling on Twitter aimlessly and was like, huh, cool EKG. But so I love using it to learn. And I feel like you also just got to figure out who your audience is. And that's where there's some accounts on social media that I don't like and I don't follow because content isn't for me. Like, I don't need a motivational you know, post about you can get into med school or the MCAT, la la la. I'm like, this post wasn't for me. Just move on with your day. And
Yeah.
I think people forget that there's people on the other side of the screen, and you need to be careful with what you put out there all the time. I'm gonna end our first session, and I'm so thankful and happy that you could officially be our first guest. Do you have any parting wisdom, anything interesting that you learned recently that you want to share?
Let's see, things that I recently
Sorry to put you on the post.
Do they have to be related to medicine?
No, not at all. I prefer to learn something outside of medicine.
Okay, so did you know you've lived in New York City before, correct? Ish.
I'm happy that my persona has.
We'll pretend.
I lived in Brooklyn during med school, so I technically.
Oh, that counts. Yeah, that's fine. Same, and I pretend sometimes. But the New York City subway system, the MTA, right? So they have one big system now, but they actually used to be 3 separate systems. And so that's actually how the trains are labeled, is by their old subway system.
Like the one, like the F and the G, like is there a reason that the F is so terrible besides just location, or is it just?
I'm trying to remember the exact details. I know, so the IRT is the one that runs usually through Manhattan, and I think those are all of the number trains.
Yeah, like
and then it's like the former half of the alphabet and the latter half of the alphabet used to be 2 separate lines as well, and it has something to do with Brooklyn. I think it might have been called like BMT, Brooklyn Metropolitan Transit or something. Yeah, so moral of the story is that now it's one big system, but it used to be 3 separate ones, and then MTA bought all of them, and now they're all.
That's why it runs so efficiently these days. Well, thank you so much for being our first guest. I hope that we can have you on again sometime soon, and good luck to you on week number 2.5, 3 on being a senior resident. All right. How do I stop? Oh my God, I would be so pissed if I didn't record that.